What is up, everybody? It is me, BlazeBuster. I have a friend here. Welcome to our podcast called Working Title. And today this is something that I wanted to try out, something new. And today we're going to be talking about the armies of Middle-earth versus the Galactic Empire from Star Wars. So basically just the Lord of the Rings versus Star Wars. I'm going to be...
I think I just shat my pants.
Okay. I'm going to be representing the Lord of the Rings.
Not a drill. I wish I was joking. I think I actually just shat my pants.
Bro, we're not even 2 minutes in! What do you mean?
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm going to be representing the Lord of the Rings. He's going to be representing the Star Wars. Yeah, that's pretty much like all the base knowledge.
I'm scared that me saying I shat my pants is gonna manifest me shitting my pants in the future. Is that a thing that can happen?
Use the Force.
We're gonna have to edit this all out.
No, it's a podcast. Most of it doesn't get edited, so you know.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's good comedic relief.
So, I was thinking, like, I've been thinking about this topic for the past couple of weeks when I brought it up to you, and you know, at first I thought it was like an impossible task for even of all of the people in Middle-earth, and I'm talking about like orcs, elves, dwarves, and man all teamed up to fight against an empire, like the Empire. I didn't think they could win, specifically because Palpatine. And Palpatine's gonna be in this. We'll talk about him later. I honestly could not feasibly think of a way Middle-earth could beat him. I've thought of one way, and I'll get to that later when we finally get to Palpatine. But you know, as I've been researching for this video or podcast, I'm actually shocked at how powerful Middle-earth actually is when you stack it up against something like the Empire. Is there anything you want to say about how strong the Empire is?
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, it's not like there's much magic involved in the Empire. You know, it's a very logical sort of regime, but at the same time, you've got to take into account how extremely advanced the tactics and technology at the disposal of the Empire is. I don't think we're going to be exactly delving into, like, mechanized sides or, like, air support necessarily in this fight. It's, like, purely two battles between two armies, I think.
I mean, you can bring up the vehicles. I've thought about how they could fight against those too. We can like talk about it as well. You can bring them up if you want. And then I can talk about ways that they can try and fight against them. But yeah, it's gonna be mostly just troops.
That makes sense.
You're right. Completely on how technologically advanced the Empire is compared to the armies of Middle-earth, which was another thing I thought of immediately, was just their blaster rifles, and at first their armor. Now, at first I was like, their armor's probably pretty strong, but then I remembered, no, Stormtrooper armor is literally, I'd say arguably worse than the armor that all of the armies of Middle-earth. Because, like, Stormtrooper armor, especially in recent years, it shatters to everything. Like, in The Mandalorian, we see, like, Boba Fett, when he has his long stick, and he just, like, completely just shatters that Stormtrooper's helmet. Or that one other Mandalorian girl with just a metal hammer. Just completely demolishes Stormtrooper armor with like one
Okay,
hit.
I'm going to interject here. You know, there's also the case of the Ewoks that you could take into consideration.
Yeah,
the fact of the matter is, armor in the Star Wars universe at the time of the Stormtrooper has evolved thusly that it's no longer directed at reducing physical damage. Their armor is specifically designed to reduce power from blaster bolt shots. That's exclusively what the armor is designed to do. You take anything ballistic to that armor, obviously, it's not going to hold up as well. So I think Middle-earth definitely has an armor superiority, but then again, you know, they've got really advanced weapons that will probably pierce their armor just as easily, you know?
Oh, I don't know if it would pierce their armor, though. That's what I was also thinking about. Obviously, it would hurt a lot, and it would probably melt their skin under it. But like, let's say they put up like a shield, like if they had a shield, do you think that their blaster bolts would go straight through that shield? I'm honestly not too sure.
I doubt it. That's not really the nature of blaster bolts. They don't tend to be, unless it's like something really high powered. They don't tend to be super penetrative. They're just generally kind of like a blunt force burning impact.
Yeah, that
they're basically pressurized gas bolts when you really do the math on them.
Yeah. So like, obviously they have a huge technological advantage, but one thing that Middle-earth does have is training. Like, the average elf soldier compared to the average stormtrooper, or even average, you know, like, man soldier in Lord of the Rings has been shown to do a lot more work in a battle than a stormtrooper has. Like, at the Battle of Helm's Deep, you got all these soldiers fighting, and these elves, like the elves, you got people up on top of the tower, and they're shooting arrows down, and then they got like a whole entire army of elves right behind them shooting arrows that are just literally flying like near the ears of the other army, so that they're so good at archery that they can shoot an arrow, shoot it right past their ally's neck and hit right into the enemy, compared to like a stormtrooper who in modern Star Wars television, we see they can't even hit a tin can sitting on a rock in The Mandalorian. Like, you know, those two stormtroopers just pick up like a blaster and try to shoot this rock just sitting down, and like they miss like 5 times in a row.
Okay, here's 2 points I'm going to make. A, you're very correct. I think the canonical reason for that is there's a targeting incongruency between their helmet targeting system and their blasters a lot of the times. That's incorrectly tuned in a lot of cases, which is like the canonical reason for why they tend to miss so much versus like, say, clone troopers or something. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, I will say, I can't deny, obviously, a lot of the Lord of the Rings troops are going to have a lot of superiority in terms of training, unit tactics, etc., etc. But you're talking, at the same time, you're talking a galactic-sized fighting force versus Lord of the Rings. And obviously, you know, like, the armies of Middle-earth are going to have a lot of numbers, but while the stormtroopers are extremely disposable, how much are those numbers really, I mean, how far does the numbers alone get them, you know?
That's also true, and I think that's where orcs and Uruk-hai really come into handy there, because orcs and, like, Uruk-hai are like literally just the stormtroopers of the Lord of the Rings. Like, they're still effective, and I'd arguably say that maybe their skill is better than a stormtrooper. I don't know if I want to say that per se, because like the average orc isn't really great. Now the average Uruk-hai, which is basically just man orc, that's what that means. It's just like orc man. I would argue that because they're around the same as like a man's strength. I would say that because like in the movies and in the books, it's shown that orc armies are like massive. Like at the Battle of Helm's Deep alone, there was 10,000 Uruk-hai, and they all charged Helm's Deep. And then like at the Battle of the Black Gate, there was even more. And if you remember in the movie when they're at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, which just think about that real quick, is there was the Battle of Pelennor Fields at Minas Tirith, and like the Haradrim and the orcs, there was like thousands upon thousands, And then later, I think it's like, what, 3 days later or something, there's the Battle of Black Gate, and there's like even more, like thousands upon thousands. And of course, that was about, I think that was about the end of Sauron's orc troops, but he still had Uruk-hai left, and he still had Haradrim, and if you really want to stretch it, he technically had the orcs in Gundabad, and he technically had the Easternlings in Rhûn. So I think Mordor is going to be our fodder type of situation, because they have so many troops at their disposal. Now, I don't really want to bring up Gundabad and the Easternlings other than Harad, because Harad is a lot known more. But that's one thing I think, is that Mordor will be pretty much our just fodder troops mostly.
I agree. I think obviously the Empire, stormtroopers are fodder troops infamously. I think that they can be an effective fighting force. I think both sides can, but I will add this. I don't exactly know how large the combined armies of Middle-earth are going to be, but I know that at the beginning, now obviously, I'm just doing some rough math here. Obviously there's no real figures statistically stated as to how large the Imperial army is, but I'll put it to you like this. At the beginning of the Clone Wars, like Episode 2 era, like when they're just starting out, there is 1.2 million clone troopers in service. By the end of the Clone Wars, and I know a lot of that didn't transition over, but I'm just the scale of armies in Star Wars, I'm just, doing math here. By the end of the Clone Wars, let's say there's 1.2 million in the first year or so. The Clone Wars went on for maybe 5 years, something like that.
Yeah, I think
so. That's probably going to be about 5 million or so total, roughly. Maybe they ramped up production, maybe they didn't. I don't know. I'm just kind of guessing here. Mm-hmm. By the end of the Clone Wars, now obviously clones age faster. By the time the Empire is fully in effect, a lot of those clones are going to be out of commission. I mean, there is cases of clone troopers doing that, but a lot of them were manually recruited, like humans and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, if that's the army of the Grand Republic, obviously, I think the army of the Grand Republic was designed for attack, correct? It wasn't designed for subjugation. A lot of their army was basically just going place to place, liberating the place, and then picking up boots. The Empire is designed for subjugation. They've got a presence on pretty much every habitable planet, meaning they're staying there, meaning they have to have, logically.
But they also, like, we've seen, sorry to interrupt, but we've also seen, like, in Star Wars Rebels, like, on Lothal, like, the stormtrooper presence there, but it's minimal. It's like, yeah, you're right, but they're also not, like, completely infesting every area type of situation.
Well, no, they're not completely infesting every area. I'm just thinking if there has to be a stationed number per planet, I would imagine they are probably at or maybe more than the clone trooper army at the end. I don't know. This is all like really rough guesstimation. Like I said, there's no real figures to this. The only conclusive figure we have is how many clone troopers were at the beginning of the Clone Wars. That's the only figure we have for armies. And, off of that metric, I don't know. I would guess maybe like 7 to 10 million or something, which I think maybe the combined armies of Middle-earth, they're obviously going to be quite a few million themselves.
Yeah. And there's even more things I can bring up. Like, if we had Ents, I could see Ents taking out maybe a good solid chunk. Because, like, there's a freaking ton of Ents. Like, if you've ever seen... have you ever watched the extended edition of The Two Towers?
Yeah.
Not to mention, there's Ents. There's also the Hjorns. I don't know exactly how to say it, but they're basically just trees that sit there, and whenever like evil forces come in contact, they'll just like spring to life and attack. And like at the end of the Battle of Helm's Deep, all the Uruk-hai run into the forest, and like you could see for miles just the trees shaking because they're just like killing all the Uruk-hai that ran into the forest.
What I will say is, obviously there are regiments of stormtroopers for everything. It's a very versatile fighting force, but there's regiments of stormtroopers geared with flame gear, and also the standard blaster bolt has a significantly noted heat aspect. So I think, I mean, obviously it's going to take a lot of blaster fire to take down something that big, but at the same time, I think the fact that they have like a flame aspect to them, they are vulnerable to enough fire from the stormtroopers. Like, I don't think they're invincible.
No, Ents are nowhere near invincible. We've seen that in like the books and the show, or in the books and the movies. Like, if they're caught on fire, I think Treebeard said specifically their axes and their fire was what they hated the most, because it's what hurt them the most.
So, I feel like, yeah, they would be pretty vulnerable to a lot of technology that the Empire has at its disposal, but their sheer size and tankiness is going to mean, yeah, they're going to do some damage.
That and trolls. Like, trolls are... Treebeard described them in the book as a little bit shorter and a little bit weaker than Ents. They were designed to mimic Ents. And their versatility, Sauron, he uses them, honestly, like, mostly as just machinery. Either as war machines themselves, or operating them, or, like, pushing them. Like, you remember, like, in the Battle of Pelennor Fields, they had those giant towers that the trolls were pushing that were just full of orcs that he would like attach to the city and have the orcs spew out of them. Like, trolls, I think, would be very useful in a fight like this because they're very resistant to damage and they deal a lot of damage. Now, obviously, you stick enough blaster bolts in them, they're probably gonna die. I don't think they're invincible or anything.
I agree. So yeah, I think just army versus army, if you're just talking foot soldiers, like no siege machines, no machine or vehicles, if you're just talking army v army, I think the stormtroopers are definitely going to have significantly more numbers, but at the same time, we went over this, their armor is not that good for against ballistic attacks, and they're not going to be extremely accurate in a lot of cases. So
yeah.
If you've got, like, the elves on archery, you know, you've got, like, mankind on archery, and just, like, orcs at flak up front with, like, maybe some ents and stuff like that, I honestly don't know. It would be an interesting fight to see. It's basically just sheer numbers and technological superiority versus a smaller but much more skilled fighting force, basically.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be kind of like a Rebel Alliance versus Galactic Empire kind of thing.
Which I will say, the Rebel Alliance always relied on guerrilla tactics. In any case where they directly faced the military might of the Empire, they folded like a deck of cards. Like, look definitely. At Hoth.
Yeah. Like,
Hoth was the might of the Rebel Alliance against the might of the Empire, and they got crushed.
Oh, yeah. Because, like, it was mostly a numbers thing in that, too. Because, like, the Rebel Alliance, how many people would you say that were in the Rebel Alliance? I'd honestly say max, probably like 20,000. Or maybe 50,000.
Overall, they did have a lot of backing. Like, they had the Mon Calamari fleets and whatnot. Like, they had a lot of backing. But I think it's pretty, you know, you should note that, you know, they weren't that big. They relied a lot on guerrilla tactics. I don't know, they did a lot better in the air. Like, Rebel Alliance fleet versus Imperial fleet, I think, might be a little more of an even fight because of the quality of their fighter pilots. But on the ground, it seems like the Empire is pretty consistent at being able to wipe them out whenever they fight.
Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and discuss vehicles a little, even if we don't really talk about them a bunch.
I know that you could technically consider the elephants of the east, kind of. You could consider those vehicles, and then you've got a lot of siege machines. I think that the orcs tend to use. Mm-hmm. And, like, catapults, neutral buckets, and whatnot. And you've got that. And those will do a lot. Like, if you've got, like, scatter shots and whatnot, just throwing them into the ranks, that's going to do a lot of damage. On the Imperial side, though, you've got... It's not super common for them to do, but they've been known to do it. You've got TIE fighters on your support, but most probably the most prevalent thing in the air that you'd see from the Empire. Probably TIE bombers. Those seem to be pretty prevalent in like ground air support operations. I think they tend to have like a bomb bay, and then they've got like, I don't know, like 5-6 charges that they can drop from said bomb bay, and that's about all they can do. I think they have cannons, but I'm not sure. There's probably going to be AT-STs, a lot of AT-STs, because when the Empire can't fit something as big as an AT-AT, it really depends on the battleground. Like, if it's something like kind of hilly and terraneous, like you're not going to be able to get an AT-AT in there, they're going to have a lot of AT-ST presence, because they designed those for like smaller, more maneuverable roles, and those have a lot of firepower. I think it's not impossible to trip them up. I mean, obviously the Ewoks were able to accomplish it, but they, if left alone, have a lot of firepower. You've got the AT-ATs, which, I don't know, honestly, I think there's a lot of things in Middle-earth that could definitely bring one down, but it takes a lot to bring down an AT-AT.
Honestly, I'm just imagining like a Mumakil charging into the side of an AT-AT, and that sounds like freaking awesome. Like, just a giant elephant charging into the side of an AT-AT. That just sounds so cool.
I think if the elephants were the same size as an AT-AT, which they might be, I think they might be a little smaller, but they're probably about the same size.
It depends.
I think that the elephants...
It depends on whether you're talking about the book or the movies, because almost like all the big troops in the books are scaled up for the movies.
Yeah. We'll go with movies, just to be fair, you know, like size-wise.
Yeah.
I think that the AT-ATs, they're usually going to be in the back, so they're going to have heavy cannons that are going to be, like, really putting artillery power onto the forces, kind of like the Trebuchets and catapults are going to be onto the Empire. They're kind of the artillery emplacements. You're going to have AT-STs that are probably going to be up front. They're going to be easier to trip up, especially to the elephants that can probably just kind of mow them over. But they, too, have a lot of firepower, like grenade launchers, autocannons, what have you. I don't think they'd use speeder bikes. Those tend to be a lot more scouting role than attack, so they probably wouldn't have too many of those.
Okay, so AT-ATs are 74 feet tall, and Mumakil in the movies are around 35 to 45 feet tall.
So they would probably be able to charge the legs.
Yeah.
If you did that, I know that AT-ATs, they're extremely slow-moving and clunky, like to move around and turn around and stuff.
I think if they charged the legs, it would definitely fall. Because, like, the Rebel Alliance took them down just by a wire, wrapping it around an AT-AT's legs. And then they, like, fell pretty easily. So I think... Yeah, I think of a Mumakil, like a giant elephant, equipped with, like... Because, like, they do... like equip them with war armor, like little spikes and stuff, but that doesn't really matter as much. I think if it like fully forced charged into an AT-AT's legs, it would definitely buckle under that.
Yeah, I think so too, but I think at the same time, you see in like the Hoth battle and whatnot, those tend to be in the back. They tend to be more of like an artillery support role. They're where the command is. They deploy troops from them, and they use their cannons to like launch into the enemy forces more than like being on the forefront. So if you could get a charge of those elephants past the Imperial like main army, like route them around or like just charge straight through at them, you know, you've got them at a disadvantage. But at the same time, there's a lot between those elephants and the AT-ATs. That said, AT-STs are probably going to be about the same size, height-wise, as the elephants, and yeah, I think those. I don't think there's much an AT-ST could do against those elephants unless it gets the right shots off at it.
Another thing I wanted to talk about regarding their vehicles is Empire durability. I think generally is just not super great, specifically because they have to make so many different things to just supply their entire armies that they have to cut corners, kind of like how, you know, Stormtrooper armor isn't super great.
I agree. I think, you know, it's not like anything is going to be anything the Empire can throw at them. Nothing about it is going to be invincible. The Empire's strength in any instance it appears, is technological superiority, including in the Star Wars universe, and numbers. Their armor, their defense is never going to be that great. If you somehow had a force that could overwhelm the Empire in skill and numbers, the Empire is probably going to lose. Their thing is not defense tactics. Their thing is just basically brute force.
And the reason I was bringing that up specifically is because their vehicles, I think, because like didn't the Ewoks like just smash an ATST with like 2 logs?
Yes, their armor is not that great. If you generated sufficient force... Okay, so let me put it this way. This was actually a Mythbusters episode. ATSTs have about the equivalent strength of an armored truck, their cabin does.
Really?
The logs they were using were like redwood timbers. They were super big, super huge, super heavy to crush that. But yeah, they're about the equivalent of like an armored truck plating around the cabin. So they're not... It's not like spears and like maybe even catapult stones. I don't think those could crush them. But like I said, if you get an elephant charging them, it's probably going to go down.
The one vehicle that I think Middle-earth has barely any defense against would be TIE fighters and TIE bombers, specifically because their only flying troops are the Felbeast and the Eagles, and Smaug, if we like allow him in this fight, which I don't really know if we want to or not. Like, he wouldn't really do much, in all honesty. He would just like rain fire from above, and he could maybe take out a couple TIE fighters, but he's also not fast enough per se to take out all of them before he's taken
That's
down.
my thing. Like, they have things that could hit a TIE fighter, but TIE fighters, even TIE bombers, are very fast moving. They're going to swoop down, they're going to drop their loads, they're going to swoop back. You know, this is just like... Air is a really tricky thing. That's the one thing I think that Middle-earth would just overall struggle the most with. I mean, you've got like Gandalf and people who could probably like project magic, but your average troop doesn't have that. It's going to be really hard for them to defend against something like that.
Yeah. Okay, we could talk about Sauron's siege machines, but he doesn't really... They're mostly battering rams and stuff to get through walls, so...
I think, but there's a pretty healthy presence of catapults and trebuchets and stuff, kind of artillery.
There's a ton of catapults. Trebuchets and catapults. Sauron has those. And, like, another thing, morality-wise, Sauron just loves to destroy the hope of victory. That's, like, one of the things he did in, at the Battle of Osgiliath. After he won that, he took the dead corpses of the Gondorian soldiers, chopped off their heads, and then just threw them onto catapults into Minas Tirith.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like, that's freaking crazy, bro! Like,
I think that, in a lot of ways, the psychological goals, the psychological aspects of the Empire and the Middle-earth armies, what their goal is and what their tactics are extremely similar. They're both hoping to just overwhelm by overwhelming brute strength and intimidate and demoralize their enemies. I think that's a common shared tactic between the two.
Mordor and Sauron's forces literally do the very same things that the Empire does. Like, Sauron's main goal when he goes into a fight is to have so many troops that when you come out of the fight, and even if you win, you're so demoralized to fight again because of how many people you lost.
That is literally the exact philosophy in the Empire, too.
Exactly. Like, Sauron fights exactly like the Empire does. So, that's one thing I thought of, is Sauron is a lot like the Empire in that case. And he has a ton of orcs, Uruk-hai, Olog-hai, and a ton of other different things that... So I could definitely see, like, I'd definitely say the Stormtroopers have more.
Overall, my analysis is, I think, infantry-wise, skill and number are going to about balance out. I think if you're just considering raw infantry of the two sides, I think they're about evenly matched. Like, if you're not factoring in anything just but the infantry, I think... When you factor in vehicles and siege machines for both sides, like... And we're going to use the elephants, because that's only fair, really. They're a counter to a lot. I think, once again, I think the Empire has an edge, with like TIE fighters, like vehicle-wise, but I think a lot of their stuff is also really vulnerable. So I'd say that the Empire kind of has a slight upper edge there,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
not as much as you would think.
Yeah, to me, their only actually up edge would be their TIE fighters.
Yeah, I agree. That would be the hardest thing for me to think of anything that they could counter with.
Let's move on to some of our more heavy hitters. You have the Inquisitors, Darth Vader, Palpatine, whatever. What else? What else would you want to bring
Well,
in?
they're going to be a much smaller sect of the army, but you've got gosh, what are they? I'm trying to think of the name of them. They're basically robot soldiers. They're reconstructed clone troopers, basically.
Yeah, I think
Dark troopers, I think.
I think they're called Dark Troopers.
They are basically kind of like droids, but really heavily armored. You've got those. You've got Death Troopers. Those are kind of like heavier hitters. They're going to be much smaller presence on the battlefield, but they're going to be a lot more elite.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably got the Inquisitors kind of acting like field commanders, like orc generals. They're not like super powerful necessarily, but they're going to be able to do a lot of damage, I think, under the right pretenses, but they can also be pretty easily overwhelmed. They're not like god tier or anything. But they're going to be field generals. They're going to be out there, and I think, like the Force, they can do a lot with the Force. But at the same time, like any good army is going to defeat an Inquisitor. They're not god tier.
They're not like, it's not like a Jedi type of situation where a Jedi master
No.
steps on the field.
Honestly, there's plenty of tenses, like shows and stuff like Rebels and whatnot, where you can see any decently skilled Jedi is going to be able to put up a fight, if not defeat an Inquisitor.
That was something I wanted to bring up about the Inquisitors. We've seen that Inquisitors are consistently Padawan to Jedi Knight level. Because
they rely a lot less on the Force than your average Sith Jedi, and a lot more on technology and gadgets that the Empire gives them.
Yeah, because like Star Wars Rebels and Jedi Fallen Order are where you see them the most. And Cal Kestis from Fallen Order is a Jedi Padawan, and he beats almost all of the Inquisitors from what I remember. And
yeah,
Kanan and Ezra are both Padawans, and they beat the Grand Inquisitor, and they fight against a bunch of other Inquisitors as well. So
I will say that the Grand Inquisitor is significantly more of a fight than the other Inquisitors, but he's still just an Inquisitor at the end of the day.
I would say he's probably like more Jedi Knight level, but we've consistently seen that the Inquisitors are like Jedi Padawan strength level. Because
yeah, that's pretty much what they are.
Yeah, so like they're strong compared to like even your average Death Trooper or Dark Trooper, but one thing I really wanted to talk about was the 9 Nazgul versus the 10 Inquisitors.
Okay, that's another thing. I think that the Inquisitors, they rely on numbers. Like, anytime you see them fight like a Jedi Master in the comics or whatnot, because they appear in the comics a bit, anytime you see them fight or hunt for a Jedi Master, like even in like Kenobi and whatnot, anytime they appear in search of a Jedi, there is no less than 3 of them present.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like the Empire thinks that they're solidly Padawan level. They have to travel in at least groups of 3 in order to get anything significant done.
Oh yeah.
But I think that, I don't know, the Nazgul tend to be horseback riders, don't they? Like, they tend to have a lot of cavalry aspects to them.
I'll go deep into them in a minute. You just go ahead and...
I think that the Inquisitors, they actually have solid armor. Like, we see that their armor is like lightsaber resistant, blaster. Like, I think ballistically,
I wouldn't say
their
lightsaber
armor
resistant, but blaster resistant.
Well, it's not lightsaber resistant, but I think ballistically their armor is going to be a lot more solid than, say, like a stormtrooper or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the same time, They rely on gadgets. They rely on those like spinning blade lightsabers a lot more than anything. Like that's their whole thing.
Literally
they're not
flying
super.
using lightsabers.
They're not super literate at like force. Like they're not super powerful at the force. The most you see them do is maybe like a force lift or a force push. Like you don't see them do anything like force lightning, force choke, anything super significant. They just kind of interact with things with the force sometimes.
Bro, can we real quick talk about how dumb the fact that they can use their spinning lightsabers to fly? Like,
it's kind of dumb. We'll just ignore that. We'll just ignore that one.
They're usually just like.
We'll just ignore that one. That we won't feature that one.
Okay, yeah.
I think that speed-wise, they're not going to be as fast as the Nazgul, because the Nazgul are mainly cavalry-based, even though they have a lot of ground fighting. So I think the Nazgul definitely have an upper hand in like speed and agility-wise, but I also think that the Inquisitors, they have a lot more. They can output a lot more damage because of those lightsabers. The Nazguls basically have swords, and the Inquisitors are going to have spinning lightsabers, so they're going to be able to do a lot with those against the Nazgul. I think, but at the same time, it's basically just like speed versus damage, I think.
Okay, so in this, we're going to use the 9 Nazgul from the movies. Because we could talk about like the 9 Nazgul from the games. Like, in some of the games, each Nazgul has a different name and a different weapon. Like, there's Lothar, Cicero, Skullhelm, the Undying, the Shadow, Quran. But in true Lord of the Rings canon, the only named Nazgul are the Witch King and Khamûl. So we're just going to say 8 of the Nazgul look like they do in the movies. They're going to have the black cloaks with the sword. And then 1, which is the Witch King, he'll have his flaming sword and his flail. But the Nazgul, you're right in that they're usually cavalry, but they were only cavalry in the first movie. After they go down to Mordor, they have fell beasts, which are kind of like flying snake monsters. We don't really have to talk about them, but if we do, basically, they're just flying creatures that are strong. I don't think the Inquisitors are really going to have a tough time taking down a fell beast. You're right in the fact that the Nazgul will have a harder time getting through the Inquisitor's armor. But the Nazgul are also Sauron's right-hand men. Like, think of the Nazgul as, like, Sauron's Darth Vader, just stretched into 9 different people, pretty much. Because
I think, Oh, go ahead.
Because, like, the Witch King is obviously the most powerful, and I want to talk about him specifically in a minute. But the Nazgul, on their own, are a frickin' force to reckon with. Because they have so many diverse powers and strengths that I have a feeling that they might be able to just overwhelm the Inquisitors. Like, every time a Nazgul approaches, they just strike fear into everything around them. It comes with their screech. Like, their screech alone is described to be one of the most terrifying things in Middle-earth. Like, if people just hear that screech, immediately they run away. And that's how it's always been. But they also have their Morgul blades, which if you're stabbed by a Morgul blade, you're done. The only way you're getting out of that is if you get elvish healing, and I don't think the Inquisitors are gonna go to the elves for healing. If they do, I'm gonna be very surprised. But like,
I don't think not. I think that the Inquisitors. Yeah, I definitely think that the Inquisitors are gonna lose. I'm not arguing with you on that. I do think that they're going to be able to take down a fair few of the Nazgul with them, though. I don't think that the Nazgul are just going to get away scot-free, but I do think that the Inquisitors are going to lose.
But that's another thing, is you can't technically kill a Nazgul.
Well, yeah, aren't they, like, willfully intangible? Like, they can choose when to become tangible?
Their cloaks. When they have their cloaks on, they're intangible. If they have them off and, like, you walk through them, all of your like equipment just like breaks or something. Like I think it was described as like if somebody tried to stab a Nazgul when they don't have their cloak on, their like sword just broke or something. I don't remember exactly how it was, but whenever they have their cloaks on, they enter the normal realm, and whenever they take them off, they go back into the Wraith world.
So theoretically, they could be removed from the equation, not necessarily killed, but defeated.
Yeah, technically they would just go back to Sauron, get another cloak, and then come back. It's usually what they would do.
Which, for the purposes of like a singular battle, I think that they could ideally be defeated. Maybe not like killed, but defeated.
Yeah, definitely.
Not all of them. I think they definitely have the upper hand, but I think for the sake of the battle, I think a few of them could be taken out of the equation.
Another thing the Nazgul have, and it's one of their strongest things, is their Black Breath. If an Inquisitor is hit by their Black Breath, then they're incapacitated from the fight. Because, like, how it works is, if you're hit by the Black Breath, you're knocked unconscious for at least a couple days, or if you're hit by enough of it, you're unconscious forever. Like, you fall into an endless sleep. So I think if any of the Inquisitors get hit by that Black Breath, then they're done.
I think that...
Oh, hold on one second. I think what would most likely happen is the Nazgul would enter the fight, end up using their Black Breath, and probably taking down a couple of the Inquisitors with it immediately. And then after that, the Inquisitors would all put on that mask thing that they have. And then they would just finish the fight with that on. But I could definitely see a couple of them going down just from the Black Breath itself.
I agree. I think that, in the end, there would probably be a few Nazgul left. I think if you tier up to, like, Darth Vader, or heck, even a Royal Guard, I think that the Inquisitors purely lose because they don't have the skill or force ability to properly stop a Nazgul. But if you get up to, like, Darth Vader, I don't think he's going to have any issue so far. Now, the Witch King is an interesting concept because I know there's that prophecy where he can't be killed by a man.
Yeah, I was going to go into that.
Are we just, like, theoretically factoring that out for this fight, or are we just...
At first, I was thinking about it, because it's a spell. It's a spell that he has on him. Because the Witch King is actually a sorcerer. Many of the Nazgul were sorcerers, and they can use magic, but we're not really sure what magics they can use. The Witch King is the only one that we know that can use magic, and we know what he can do. He uses frost magic, so he can, like... Because he's one of the reasons why Angmar is covered in snow and ice. He put it that way. So, not only can he use magic, he has that spell on him where it says, "No man shall kill me." Now, at first, I thought man as in the race of men. But in the book, it was described when he fought Eowyn in the Battle of Pelennor Fields, she took off her helmet and said, "I am no man," at the beginning of their fight. And the Witch King was visibly concerned, meaning that it wasn't just the race of man, because she's part of the race of man, but that since she's a woman, he knew that she could usurp the prophecy or the spell. So by that logic,
technically it just applies to human males, basically.
I think so. And because of that, if we want to use the spell, none of the human males on the Empire side could technically kill him, unless they can dispel him. Now, the Empire has aliens, and they also have females, like Sister Six as an Inquisitor, so they do have those, but they also have quite a lot of human males. Like Palpatine and Anakin are both human males.
I think that even if you couldn't kill him, I think if you get up to like tiers like Palpatine and Vader, they don't need to kill him. They could incapacitate him very easily. I don't think that's a factor. I think for the purpose of killing, either maybe one of the Inquisitors happens to be able to kill him, which I doubt, honestly, because he's the Witch King, or
which even if they
or I don't know. I don't know if there's necessarily... I'm not sure if stormtroopers can be female. I don't think it's out of canon, but I don't know.
They're just faceless. That's all we really know. They're just faceless fodder troops.
I would imagine there's probably some females, maybe a straight blaster bullet hits him, but I don't really know, honestly. That's kind of an interesting one.
Exactly. When I found out that in the book he was afraid when he found out she was a woman, that would mean that it's not just the race of man. It's just like
he knows for a fact it's exclusively human males. Which technically, by that logic, I don't think any of the Inquisitors are actually humans.
Actually, wait a minute.
I think one of them is.
Wait a minute. He never says human male. He just says no man shall kill me. So I wonder if maybe that extends to other races as well. Because by
that logic, did someone like Gandalf kill him though? Like, how powerful is it? Basically just only magic.
Yes,
how powerful does that extend to?
I am a firm believer that Gandalf could do it specifically because he is a Maiar. It's a race which are they're basically angels. The Maiar are basically angels, and Gandalf is one of them. So I believe he could. It's just a discussion on if he's strong enough to do it.
I honestly don't know with the Witch King. I think he could be defeated by like Vader or Palpatine at the least.
I do too.
I think it's tricky.
But I also,
if not defeated, then immobilized. I think it wouldn't be hard for them to immobilize him at all.
Speaking of Vader, let's get into him.
Darth Vader. There's a lot that could be said about him, but I think before we acknowledge his immense power, because obviously he's extremely powerful in every medium he's in, I think it's important that we acknowledge his limitations, because he does have some.
Oh, yeah.
There are instances in which, I mean, obviously he's mostly cybernetics. Those can be damaged. It's rare for it to happen, because usually he's on top of things, you know? I think the only cases in which he is seriously damaged by something is not when he's fighting something, but when he doesn't expect something, when he's either surprised by something or he underestimates something. I think those are the times at which Vader is most often beat in a conventional sense. I think, though, he's extremely resilient. He's extremely resistant to pain. He's wearing armor that can literally deflect blaster bolts in and of itself, and ballistic damage of all kinds. He's been confirmed to take down entire armies on his own. I mean, I feel like anything of fodder troop level or below is just going to be.
Oh, it's dead, bro. Bro, they're dead.
I don't think anything. I don't even think like the elephants. I don't think anything like that is even going to come close to slowing him down.
No, Vader's going to be slicing through them like butter. Like, bro, Vader's on a whole nother level. He's like one of the things I was most concerned about, but I do have a couple things that could maybe take him out.
If you get into like actual like general tier, hero tier, I don't think he would have too much trouble with necessarily just the standard Nazgul, because he could like disrobe them or immobilize them. There's a lot he could do, and technically,
their black breath
he's
can't hurt him.
Confirmed. Yeah, he has a self-compressed life support system. He does not breathe external air.
Exactly. Yeah.
He can survive. In fact, you'll notice TIE fighters actually don't have any life support systems. The life support systems in TIE fighters are contained inside the suit. That's why TIE fighter pilots wear the suits that they do. Vader obviously isn't wearing one of those suits. His suit, that's another proof of it, but there's tons of other like comic references and whatnot to the fact that his suit is entirely self-pressurized. Like, nothing aerosol gas mist based is going to hurt him.
Oh, definitely. The two biggest heavy hitters I believe are going to fight Sauron on a equal level would be Saruman and Sauron. Saruman, specifically, his most powerful asset is his voice. Saruman the White, Saruman of many colors, whichever you want to call him, his voice is his most valuable asset, because he can speak to you, and as he speaks to you, he can put spells on you to make you listen to him. And Vader isn't super easily. How do I put this? Vader is somewhat easily manipulated. He was manipulated by Palpatine, and he isn't. I don't want to say he's like easily manipulated because he's not, but he's open to it. Like he can be manipulated.
Yes. I don't think he's like close to that. I think Palpatine's a lot more close to that than he is. Vader is first and foremost a blunt instrument of pure rage.
Oh, yeah.
That's basically what he is. I mean, there's very little that can even slow him down. I mean, in any incarnation, any film, TV appearance that you see him, there's like very little that will even slow him down.
So then, I personally believe Sauron could beat Darth Vader, and this is one of the reasons why. First, are we using full power Sauron?
Sure. I think that's probably... Well, it depends. I mean, what exactly happens to and constricts Sauron after the last time he takes the field?
Sauron,
like
when Sauron created the One Ring, he put a heavy amount of his strength into the ring. So he is significantly weaker without it. And he doesn't have his full abilities.
If Middle-earth is as it is, he probably doesn't have the One Ring.
Well, can we... Let's just not say he has the ring, but can we say he's at his full power, but without the ring?
Yeah, we could do that.
Because if we do, he becomes a huge heavy hitter in this fight. Sauron...
Well, yeah, he's gonna be.
Sauron, at his full power, has a freaking ton of powers. Here, let me read some of his powers. He's got telekinesis, mind manipulation, illusions, shadow magic, darkness manipulation, shadow walk, pyrokinesis, fire immunity. He's immortal because he's a Maiar, regeneration, resurrection, longevity, spirit form, world manipulation, shape-shifting, soul manipulation, teleportation, fear invoking, weather manipulation, meteor summoning, intangibility, enchanting, necromancy, the lidless eye, weapon immunity, master manipulator, skilled tactician, and electrokinesis. So
essentially he's basically a Sith Lord on steroids.
Kinda, yeah.
He has all the powers that would entail a Sith Lord, it seems like, plus more. Some of them wouldn't be particularly useful in a combative situation, but I think him versus Vader would be a hell of a fight. I think if you're just using his weapon versus Vader's weapon, I think a lightsaber is just innately...
Yeah. But
a lightsaber is innately more powerful, but that's not the only thing in play. Vader, I don't know, he can move pretty fast, but he's still bulky. He's constricted by his suit. He's learned how to work around it, but that doesn't change the fact that he's constricted by it.
The one reason
I think... I honestly don't know. Like, raw power versus raw power, he's the chosen one, and he has a lot of power. But Definitely. Then, of course, there's Sauron.
The reason why I feel like Sauron would win this fight is because Vader's biggest weakness is lightning. Palpatine designed his suit specifically to be weak to lightning.
Exactly.
And Sauron has lightning manipulation because
electrokinesis and weather manipulation. Yes.
Yeah. So I believe that Sauron
could probably direct a bolt of lightning at Vader, and that would fry his suit. When Vader's suit is fried, his combative ability, and this has been, this is like reviewed in lore. It's not just like the last time a suit gets fried. His suits get fried, a couple times throughout the comics, whatnot. It severely limits his combat ability. It doesn't put him out of the fight. Obviously, he's still him, and he's still gonna try to fight. But he's a lot slower, and he's a lot weaker. And I think, Sauron would probably be able to beat him using that.
Another thing Sauron
But then again, he also has the Force. That's something that extends past, physical ability. Like, the Force can do a lot for a user. I mean, I'm not saying Vader's on this power level, but there was an ancient Sith Lord. and obviously there's like no one, if we're not doing Old Republic, but I'm just saying there's an ancient
if
Sith Lord, right?
If we did
Who
Old
literally
Republic,
holds himself together through sheer rage. Like his body's literally been cut up into millions of pieces, and he's literally just holding his physical form together through the sheer rage of the dark side.
oh yeah,
like the Force. I'm not saying Vader's on that tier, but I'm saying the Force. You can't
the Force is
ignore the
freaking
Force.
powerful. Although Sauron kind of has the Force because he has telekinesis, so he could just like, woo, give me that.
But yeah, I think with lightning, Vader's probably going to be limited to the point that Sauron's going to be able to beat him.
Sauron is
I don't
the
think
only
Vader
way.
would go down without a fight. I definitely don't think he'd go down without a fight,
no.
but I think Sauron's winning that one.
Another thing I wanted to bring up is Aragorn. In this battle, would he have his Oathbreaker army?
What, like the ghosts?
Yeah, the ghosts.
I think it's canonically established they can't harm anyone. Their only goal is, and their only ability is to scare people. Right?
In the books, yes, but in the movies, they kill all the troops at Minas Tirith and the Mumakil there.
I guess that depends on which canon you want to go off.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I'm asking you. If you want to give Aragorn that ghost army, and if you want to use the book or the movies.
I'd say give him the ghost army, but use the book, because if he has that and it's present as it is in the book, he's going to they're going to have a psychological effect on a lot of soldiers, which is going to give him a significant advantage. But at the same time, they're not going to be able to physically harm them, but they do something in being there.
Yeah, like if Aragorn has his Oathbreaker army, he'll charge the stormtroopers, and the stormtroopers start shooting at them, and they realize they can't hurt them, but they don't know if they can hurt them.
Yes,
type of thing.
Exactly. It's like a psychological thing. I think Aragorn, in and of himself, he's an extremely skilled swordsman. He's a very accomplished fighter.
He is, dude. Aragorn is the John Wick of the Lord of the Rings, bro.
But at the same time, I think the sheer number of entry. If you're just it's not like Vader. Like if you're throwing Aragorn into the middle of a pile of stormtroopers, I don't know if he could come out of that.
I don't think he would. But the reason I wanted to bring him up is because he's just so versatile, and I imagine he would have other rangers with him, because rangers.
Yeah, he probably wouldn't just be on the front. I'm not saying that he would charge a pile of stormtroopers like that. I'm just saying if you put him up against Vader, I think Vader's definitely winning that one.
Oh, I didn't really want to put him up against Vader unless maybe only way I could see him fighting Vader is if somebody kills an Inquisitor and Aragorn picks up a lightsaber and starts to use it.
You gotta remember though, lightsabers are, because of the kyber crystals and the way they work, lightsabers are innately more heavy and harder to use for someone who doesn't have a connection to the lightsaber's crystal, i.e. the Force. B, he would have zero training. He would basically be trying to swing it like a sword, which in a lot of cases does not work as well with the lightsaber as you would think.
No, but also at the same time, you don't have to be a Force wielder to use a lightsaber effectively. Like Boba Fett.
A and B, this is an Inquisitor's lightsaber. It's designed to be used by someone less fluent in the Force anyway.
And not to mention, Boba Fett was known to pick up lightsabers and use them and actually kill Jedi with them as well. So, you don't...
Well, I'm sure he's Boba Fett. I'm sure he's pretty familiar with the design of a lightsaber, because he's the galaxy's best bounty hunter. Aragorn would just be picking up this weapon he has no idea how to use.
I feel like Aragorn would figure it out pretty quickly, though, because, the Rangers are canonically, one of the most dangerous things to come upon, because it doesn't matter what situation they're in, they're going to be killing something with whatever. They pick up a rock, they kill 10 people. It's Rangers are freaking insane. So I
think he's probably an Inquisitor level threat, I would say. Maybe. I don't know. The Inquisitors might be able to beat him. If there was 2 or 3 Inquisitors on him, I think he would lose. If it was an Inquisitor versus him,
It's a little questionable.
But that said, I don't think he would be on the front like that. I think he would
I
be in
don't
more of
either.
a general position. I think his best benefit is the psychological effect of his ghost army, which is obviously going to, until the soldiers figure out that they can't hurt them, it's going to be a hell of a thing.
Another thing that the Middle Earth has is Gandalf.
Ah, Gandalf. That is a tricky one.
Yeah, definitely. I can read
I
through
think-
his powers.
I think Sauron versus would be better tiered for Palpatine. I think Gandalf versus Darth Vader would be a more interesting fight than Sauron versus
Well-
Darth Vader.
Well, let me read through some of Gandalf's powers. Enhanced strength, enhanced speed, enhanced durability, vast intellect, vast wisdom, high charisma, skilled armed fighter, spells, illumination, blinding light, commanding voice, magical kinesis, lightning strike, sword of power, counterspell, healing, light of the Valar, telepathy, fire, and Call Gwahir, which Gwahir is the king of the eagles. Call Shadowfax, which is his horse that can run for days. Shield of the Istari, Destructive Blast, and there's one more. Wait, I just remembered it, but then I forgot.
Yeah, him versus Vader would be an interesting fight, and I think a bit more of an even fight. I think that would be
Definitely.
interesting to see. I think Vader actually is capable of repelling lightning with the Force if he anticipates it, but obviously in a lot of cases, like with Sauron or with Palpatine, he's not going to be anticipating it, hence,
Another thing.
But I think he could block it with his. I mean, heck, it's canonically possible for people, Jedi and users and whatnot, to block lightning with their lightsaber.
Yeah. Another thing Gandalf has is he has one of the Elvish rings of power, the Ring of Fire, which grants him manipulation over fire, and he can create fire as well.
I mean, that would definitely be an effective weapon, but I don't think it's going to affect Vader as much. He's got a pretty heat-resistant suit.
Yeah. I wonder if the lightsaber could cut through Gandalf's staff. That's interesting.
Okay, so what is Gandalf's staff like? Is there a statistical
we,
heat resistance for it?
we don't know because in the books the staves never break, but in the movies they do. But in the movies they only break when they are in opposition to someone who is a similar power to them and magical. Like Gandalf's first staff is taken by Sauron. And then Gandalf, when he comes back as Gandalf the White, he destroys Saruman's staff with his magic, and then Gandalf's staff gets destroyed by the magic of the Witch King in the movies. But in the books, I'm pretty sure, I'd have to look into it real quick, but I don't think any of their staves are ever destroyed.
Which, I mean, if they can't be destroyed, it's basically going to be like a proverbial, not really, I mean, it's not going to have as much effect on Vader himself, but it's going to be kind of like a proverbial lightsaber item where they hit each other.
Yeah.
But I know that a lightsaber, it actually isn't like plasma or anything, or it is, but it's basically just on an objective level, they're just very, very, very hot, like the heat of multiple suns.
Yeah,
That's basically that's how they're able to cut so easily. It's not necessarily that they're.
I think I think I read 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit. I think is what I read.
Yeah, they're extremely hot. Which I don't technically know. I don't think necessarily, but that actually forges an interesting query. Is it the heat of Mount Doom that is the only thing that's able to destroy the ring? Or is it just that level of heat that they can't find anywhere else? Because if that's the case...
It's just Mount Doom specifically. Because nothing else could destroy it, because that's where it was forged.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because if it was the heat of a volcano, they could probably find a way to replicate that. The dwarves can use their forges to like forge mithril and stuff. So I believe they could probably replicate the heat of Mount Doom.
Now, my question to you is, Vader obviously is probably going to be about even with Gandalf. Gandalf might win, Vader might win. I don't know. That would be a really interesting fight. But how about
Palpatine,
the big ones?
Yeah,
Darth Sidious.
himself.
Darth Sidious versus Sauron.
So, yeah, I've been thinking over this for a couple of days. This,
Darth Sidious versus Sauron.
I've been thinking about it for a couple days, and like I said earlier, I thought of one way that they could definitively win Middle-earth. And since Sauron has his shape-shifting powers, he could shapeshift into Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, like he did with the elves. Go to Palpatine himself, present himself as an ally from Middle-earth who wants to help him take over, because Palpatine, you know, he loves taking over places, and if somebody's willingly there to give him a ring, like one of the lesser rings of men that he gave to the Nazgul, which turned them into his slaves, if he gave one of those to Palpatine, and Palpatine didn't know what it would do to him, and he put it on as a symbol of, you know, like hey, we can like fight together, and he put it on, he would become a slave to Sauron. He would have no chance of escaping Sauron's will, and then
at the same time, you ever heard, I know this is a really interesting query, but have you ever heard the phrase, don't bullshit a bullshitter? Well, scale that up 5,000 times, and you basically got two master manipulators. I mean, look at what Palpatine, we never even really know his power in the Star Wars universe because he never has to use it. Everything he does is purely based on his ability to manipulate. I think he might be able to anticipate something like that. I think it would probably in the end come down to him versus Sauron, which I think would be a really interesting fight. Because obviously, does Palpatine have a lightsaber? I don't think he would.
Because Palpatine didn't even
Palpatine doesn't like using lightsabers.
Yeah,
he doesn't. If it's his own fight in his own terms, he's not going to be using one.
He only used it as a mockery to Jedi, which is honestly just freaking metal, bro.
That's honestly terrifying. The fact that he's like in the Revenge of the Sith, that freaking death spin he does, he takes out like three Jedi masters
on the council,
of, 5 seconds, effortlessly. And he was doing it with a weapon that he only has to mock the Jedi.
Yeah, Palpatine is their biggest hitter, 100%. But I believe Sauron is 100% a better manipulator than Palpatine, simply because he, like, the One Ring is an embodiment of Sauron. And if you hold on to the One Ring, you will submit to him, unless you're Tom Bombadil, but we're not talking about him.
Let's include Tom Bombadil in the fight.
Bro, if we included Tom Bombadil in the fight, he unironically could arguably beat Palpatine.
Okay, but the question is, not can he, the question is just would he?
No, he wouldn't.
Would he feel like
he wouldn't.
Palpatine?
He wouldn't care, bro. Bro would look up, see Palpatine, go and he'd go, "Hello."
Yeah, the thing is, the way he is, he probably wouldn't give a crap about it, even if he was included.
Bro picked up the ring and said, "Cool trinket," and threw it back.
Oh my God.
Tom Bombadil is such a strange character.
I feel like he's the in-universe impersonation of God.
That's what a lot of people think he is. Some people think he's Eru Iluvatar, like actually as a person, or some people think he's Tolkien. But you know, it's all up for debate.
Anyway, I think if it came down to direct combat between Sauron and Sidious, which would be the most interesting outcome by far.
You have no power here, Dark Lord, and they just like shoot lightning at each other.
There's so much that could happen there. Again, the full extent of Sidious's power isn't really known, but what we have seen is he is able to... Basically, the Force is not people. The Force is literally in Star Wars canonically, and I was just realizing this the other day when I was researching this. People think the Force is like a power that people have. It's actually just a microscopic organism that lives in some people's blood.
Midichlorians. Ever since the prequels, it was At
the end of the day, the Force is not a power. It is basically an infection that helps you. That's what midichlorians are.
An STD that's helpful.
Like, there's certain planets that are infested with midichlorians, like, in that sense.
Well, yes, because Palpatine is literally a living dark force nexus.
Yes. He literally, even before he became a Sith, was fascinated with the Sith. He has decades on decades of study, and he's able to influence midichlorians. This is how he got Anakin to the dark side, obviously, by saying, he learned from his master how to control life and death through the Force.
Yeah.
I don't know that would necessarily have an effect on Sauron, because again, if the battle is taking place in Middle-earth, there is no midichlorians in Middle-earth other than what the Sith are bringing with them. Therefore, I don't think they're going to be... Like, if you're in the Star Wars universe and Palpatine is there, he could probably just snap you and make you dead, because midichlorians exist.
Honestly?
Throughout the air, throughout everything, and he can manipulate them.
Honestly, I just thought of this, like...
I'm just talking on a really theoretical level here.
I know. Wouldn't technically, on that, theoretically, Palpatine empower Vader and the Inquisitors just by him being there? Like, make them stronger?
Yes, but, I think that actually would happen.
But since Sauron is at his full power, the Nine Nazgul...
He's going to be empowering his troops.
Yeah, all of his troops will be superpowered as well, especially the Nazgul. Like, when Sauron's at his full power, like, the Witch King is freaking crazy, bro. But
I think
that's interesting.
That Palpatine, I want to say, honestly, because... We've seen Sauron was beaten. He was defeated.
Yeah.
I think objectively, just on that basis, I'm going to have to say that Sidious could beat him. Not that he would, not that it's like a bull-over fight. I think Sidious could beat him.
I honestly, like I said, I believe that most likely if Sauron and Palpatine got into a direct fight, Sauron would lose. But if Sauron is able to get Palpatine to wear one of his rings,
then it's over.
Then it's just a wrap. Like, it's just a wrap for Star Wars, because all Sauron has to do is tell Palpatine, "Hey, go kill your troops," and boom, they're all gone. Like, Palpatine's gonna death roll out that window and just shock them all to death. Like,
okay. Alternative closing discussion to close the podcast, because this is going to be a really easy one. 4 hand-picked Sith from any point in history versus the entire forces of Lord of the Rings. All of them.
Okay. The Lord of the Rings wins.
No.
If we're talking about the entire forces of Lord of the Rings, then we're going to the Silmarillion as well, which has
Well, I'm not
Morgoth.
talking the Silmarillion. I'm not talking like gods and deities. I'm talking like the same army we were talking about.
Oh. Yeah, that's okay. Which Sith are you talking about?
I've got one though. I've got one single Sith. Just one.
Which one?
He literally
Raven?
only was defeated because he ran out of life to kill. That's the only reason he died.
Which one's this?
This Sith was so powerful, he literally spent... Okay, in the original, his power with the Force and his hunger only progressed the longer he was alive. When he first started out, he was almost human. By the end, he was almost like a Nazgul, to literally where his robes and mask are the only thing keeping him in a corporeal form. And he's basically just this force monster feeding on entire planets, snapping entire planets' life forms out of existence just to keep himself physically there. And eventually, not even planets were enough. Like, he was literally in the nexus of entire galaxies, destroying them with touches, just looking at them, destroying them. And it wasn't enough to feed his hunger, and he just basically blinked out of existence in front of the Jedi who came to confront him.
Bro.
Like, it wasn't even that he ever was defeated. He literally just could not keep up with his own insatiable power.
He's literally just Star Wars' Ungoliant.
If we throw him, just him, into the battlefield, he could destroy everything in existence, just snap them dead basically with a touch. I'm talking about Darth Nihilus, by the way.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I figured that.
And not just that, but his robes and mask are so powerful that canonically, somebody like decades and decades, a year later, it was either Darth Vader or somebody, finds Darth Nihilus's mask, just the mask, and the mask literally corrupts them, and Darth Nihilus literally almost returns from the dead just because of how powerful he was. Like, he almost returns from the dead through his mask by inhabiting the body. Because literally, at the end, there is nothing beneath the robes. Like, when he dies, he basically just fades out of existence, and his robes and mask and lightsaber collapse to the ground. In the end, he's literally just an incorporeal... He's a god. He's a literal god that just ran out of things to sustain himself on.
Like,
that's what Darth Nihilus is.
When you bring up Legends and like Old Republic, it honestly makes the Chosen One, Anakin, look like a baby, bro.
Exactly. Darth Nihilus is my single favorite Star Wars character because he's literally just a god.
But yeah,
he can drain the life force of entire planets with just looking at them.
If he fought against all of Middle-earth, yeah, they would lose. The only things that could probably stand up against him would be like the Valar and Eru Ilúvatar himself, which by extension, technically Morgoth could probably fight against him, but that would... I don't even know if they would win.
Him, and then if you want to throw in more, you've got, I guess, Revan. Revan's pretty powerful. You've got Sion. Sion's the guy I was telling you about, who basically is invincible because he's holding himself together through pure rage. Like, he just basically is too angry to die.
Too angry to die.
Literally, he is. If you look at his character, his entire body is literally just chunks of flesh, like cracked, charred, burnt, destroyed chunks of flesh being held together by him consciously because he is simply too angry to die. That's literally his whole character.
Well,
I mean, he's a pretty grisly looking guy, not gonna lie to you, but...
Well, is there anything else you want to bring up regarding, like, the Empire versus the Middle-earth?
Okay, let's wrap it up. Who do you think, overall, ignoring the whole outcome where Sauron just completely just game over Sidious from the beginning, who do you think wins?
Okay, overall, I believe technically the Empire would win only because of Sidious. Sidious is the only thing on the Empire side, I think, that they have pretty much no chance of beating other than that one I thought of. I can't really think of another way that Middle-earth could try and beat him. Because, like, Sidious is just so insanely powerful and just doesn't have a weakness that I know of that they can exploit.
Like, if you want to get super technical, even in Star Wars, even throwing him down a reactor shaft, basically destroying his physical body, was not enough to kill him.
Exactly. Yeah. Like,
if you want to get technical.
Sidious is the only thing I can think of that they can't beat. Because Vader, if he didn't have his lightning weakness and the fact that he's much... Like, if he was still Anakin as Vader, he could probably do the same thing Palpatine did, like just be able to take him out on his own. But
I agree.
Since he has weaknesses like being slow and not super agile because of his suit and the lightning weakness especially, definitely I believe he can be taken out by the armies of Middle-earth. Specifically Sauron, Gandalf, and maybe Saruman.
Yeah, outside of like super god tier heroes, though, I think he would be able to take out pretty much anyone just like in the army itself, though.
Yeah. I can't think of anybody who could stand against
He's
Vader.
Freaking Darth Vader. He's the John Wick of Star Wars.
So, I believe that if Palpatine is there and he's fighting with them, or like if Palpatine's just there at all, then Middle-earth loses simply because of him. But if Sauron can give him that ring, and he becomes one of Sauron's Nazgul, then
there technically isn't even a war at all.
Yeah, then it's just over, because one, Palpatine could just, tell him to stop, or two, Sauron could just make him kill all of his own troops.
So, by extension, what you're saying here is Star Wars is better than Lord of the Rings.
Bruh.
No, I'm just kidding.
Ultimately, I figured...
Oh, there was another factor we didn't even bring up.
What?
The Empire's not above making use of bounty hunters.
True.
Technically, they would just be like more hero tiers. They would probably be able to take down some armies eventually. Anyway.
Honestly, I don't even know if I would put most of the bounty hunters that they would use on Inquisitor level. Like, just...
Yeah, most of them are...
Like, Boba Fett maybe could be on Inquisitor level, probably. But after that, who? Cad Bane? Mando? Like... No.
Yeah. Technically... Cad Bane did train Boba Fett's father.
True.
Like, Cad Bane is unironically probably the best bounty hunter in Star Wars, even more so than Jango or Boba.
I mean, Boba did beat him, didn't he? Didn't he kill him?
I think so, but I don't really know how I feel about that, honestly. As much as I love Boba Fett, I think it was more due to Cad Bane's age than the fact that Boba Fett is actually superior. I mean, Cad Bane's been around for... I mean, Cad Bane is a Clone Wars era character, and this is post-Empire that he's fighting Boba Fett. I mean, that's like, I don't know, like 70, 80 years, I think.
Yeah. I'd say Boba Fett's probably the stronger of the two when it comes to fight, because Boba Fett has Mandalorian training, even though modern Disney wants to say he's not a Mandalorian. He did have Mandalorian training, and he had Mandalorian armor and like a ton of gadgets to come with it, and he was just very smart. Like, being able to use a lightsaber even though you're not a Force user is honestly crazy. Not many people can do that. But no, this isn't really a discussion about Star Wars characters, though, so I don't want to get too deep into that. like Lord of the Rings versus Star Wars turns into Star Wars versus Star Wars.
Getting over. So, yeah, I think that's probably how it would go down.
Well, thanks for watching, guys. Tell us if you want more content like this, or if like leave suggestions of what we should talk about, because like honestly this was really fun. Like, I had a lot of fun just brainstorming and thinking about stuff like this. So if there's any suggestions you guys think, or even if you can think of anything, Zach, that would be fun to talk about on like a podcast scenario, just leave it in the comments. And thank you for watching Working Title. And come back next time, and always remember catchphrase.
All right, I'm gonna go clean the shit out of my pants. I've been sitting here the whole time. Remember I shorted my pants at the beginning? That hasn't gone away.
Bro, same.
That hasn't gone away. And
whoa,
all right, Working Title out.